So CGC just dropped an important update regarding how they're going to list defects on their labels. And while everybody's talking about it, I think there's one important element that might be getting skipped over. So let's talk about it. And for more comics content, head over to genoscomics.wordpress.com. All right, people, before we dive in, I just want to give a shout out to Comic Book Investments, Swagger House Comics, and Journals for Comics and Pop Culture, because each of them have dropped their own videos touching on the subject and shedding some light, as well as sharing the details and their own opinions on the subject. But I just wanted to add one more layer to this for just another element and to kind of open up the discussion a little bit more. But shout out to Dave, Chris, and Mickey for all that, and let's dive into it now. So, looking at CGC, we've already seen they've dropped several price increases over the last couple years, and now we got this update here. Now, what this means is, I'm gonna go to the specifics because everybody else has done that, and you can go see that on their website. Again, I just wanted to add another element to this discussion here. So as we get into this, I won't go into the details because everybody else has much more in depth, as well as you can just go look at the website and kind of see everything that they kind of laid out there. But there's one smaller element I want to touch on before we get into the bigger piece of why I want to do this video. The smaller part is there's a bit of transparency that I think everybody can generally appreciate in pretty much any walk of life, any area or realm of existence. There's always an element of transparency that people will enjoy, and just some bit of honesty. CGC kind of threw that out the window with this press release here, because one of the things I talked about is, and kind of the impetus behind removing a lot of the defects that will be listed on their labels, is now that CGC members have free access to the graders notes. Now, if you don't know, that is one that's just outright lie, because it's not free access. To get the access to those graders notes, you do have to be a CGC member, which is not free. It costs the minimum $25 a year to access those graders notes. So free, like, so you're already being dishonest there. And it's odd because you drop this press release on your website, and people can go to your website to see that, and they can go look at that and see, okay, well, that's not free, but CGC members, it's not free because that's part of the cost. That's part of that service. When you pay for this, you get access to those notes. So there's no free element in there whatsoever. Now, the smaller piece of this that I wanted to touch on first is that right there, because what is that going to do? Will that entice more people to join up with CGC and pay that $25 yearly membership cost, or jump up to one of the higher tiers and get more membership perks with those? That's an element I think that a few people have touched on. I think Dave did as well. But that's just something that you have to consider. Hey, look, it's a company, we're out for making money. Like, we all kind of know that going in. Like, that's just the way of the world. That's how life is. But kind of putting it behind this and then laying it out as if it's just this free thing that everybody has access to is just dishonest, and like a complete lack of transparency in however you want to word that. So you could entice people to sign up by saying this, because then you have to look at, okay, you're looking at people buying books at shops, flea markets, estate sales, wherever else, conventions especially. Just imagine shops, or especially conventions, or just any of the other online retailer or just online avenues, either Facebook Marketplace or any of the other apps that people have access to buy and sell comics. Now what happens when you're at a show or you're meeting up with somebody and you want to buy a CGC graded comic? What if the dealer or the person that you're buying it from is not a CGC member? They don't have access to those notes. The buyer may not have access to those notes. So now you have two people who may not even fully realize the scope of the defects involved with whatever book that they're in the middle of dealing. What do you do then? You're at a convention, got a bunch of deals. Are you going to stop and get the certification number for each book and try to go through, all right, well, this book has this and this? Now you've added a whole nother element to your shopping. And as I mentioned in a previous video earlier this year, the cost of collecting in 2022, now we have another addendum to that, because you're gonna require the cost of either adding CGC membership if you want access to those notes, if you're buying and selling a lot of graded books that you didn't personally have graded. That's an element there. And the time factor, which is always a constant, as I mentioned there too, is the kind of, I'm gonna say, not hidden cost, but just kind of the undervalued cost, underappreciated cost, because it's such a massive element of collecting comic books. We spend a lot of time doing anything you can imagine within the world of comics. Time goes into that heavy. Now let's get into the main element of why I wanted to talk about this and kind of add another layer to this conversation. So in their press release, they worded it as, based on feedback from prominent members of the collecting community. That right there, as vague as that is, should have sent red flags to everybody across the community. Because one, what the hell does that mean? One, the feedback, and two, members of the collecting community. Who are they talking to? And the conspiracy theorist part of me, which is pretty small, is they're talking about dealers, vendors, whoever, who have massive stacks of comics that they cannot sell because, ding ding ding, they have mad defects. So they're talking about a bunch of incomplete books, books with missing pages, Marvel value stamps, cutout, coupons, all type missing wraps, all those other defects that people generally kind of turn people off from buying a book. I'm guessing part of me is thinking they got feedback from those people like, hey, we have these books, we can't move. Once people get it close, like we can say we have this book, but once somebody, a prospective buyer, gets a up close look and says, oh, look at all these defaults. Oh, this book is missing this. Oh, this book is missing that. They're turned off immediately. Like, I'm not spending my money on this. Why? If I'm getting a book that has all these defects. Now, this is gonna be a way for them to unload a lot of that stock, make some more money. The CGC gets more money because they're probably getting more people signing in for the membership. These prominent members of the collecting community, just say the buy-sell community, is sitting on these books, and now they have a potential way to get rid of these, because unsuspecting buyers in this heightened age of speculation, again, which we've seen, especially like just blow up once COVID hit or shortly after. So speculation is just running rampant. Everything's a key, everything's this and that. All the other, those apps that are just serving up keys, and everything is everybody's got a hot list. Any other random book is a hot key every other week. Who knows what's gonna happen? So that's at its all-time high. Now you have unsuspecting people jumping into community, and they're just buying books left and right, and all of a sudden they get a book in their hand, and now they won't. At some point they'll never know. They're not likely to crack those books open, crack those cases, and reveal those books and see all those defects. But that's just a possibility. Like, that is kind of where this could be going. And is it a reach? Who knows? It could be Mr. Fantastic reach. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I think that is something that should not be overlooked. And talking about that's just such a vague statement. The moment I read it, I just thinking, one, I feel like everybody just once they read that, like, who are they talking to? Who was giving this feedback? And I think maybe Dave or Dave, Chris, or Mickey probably suggested it, and I kind of echoed the sentiment as well. All that defect info, put it on the back. I would have no problem putting on, like, list everything from those graders notes. Just put it on the back. There's a lot of space in that back label. Use it, and you could keep everything, like all the publication and credits, creator credits. Just leave all that on the front, and that's all you like. Issue number, like title, issue number, publication date. You can list the publisher as well. Why the hell not? The credits and whatever significant information there is about the book. If it is a book that applies, leave all that on the front. The grade. If you got a custom label and the CGC little sticker thing, leave all that on the front. On the back, list all the defects, and I think everybody would be fine with that, because you're at a shop, at a show, whatever. You say, hey, can I take a look at that book? And if you can see the grade, you already know, like 9.8 down to whatever, and you can kind of understand, like, okay, this book, when I pick this book off the wall, is gonna have some defects. So then you just flip it over and blah 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 blah. Oh, okay, I can see that. That's cool. Thanks. And if you If it's acceptable, hey, you go into make a deal stage and kind of go from there. And then also some of those guys did mention some of those defects, yes, if they're visible things like on the front or back covers, you can kind of see that, especially if they've got a white cover or white back cover. Flip it over and you kind of see everything there. Staples, no, not staples, but tape and glue, whatever else, a lot of stuff, staining, stickers, you can see all that. Staples, on the other hand, because the cases are so thin, yeah, you're not going to be able to really get a good look at the staples, whether they're there, whether some have been added, rusted, however else. So that was kind of one okay, you might want to know about that. But yeah, anything in the interior, anything that you can't see, you should never get rid of, because you have no way of knowing. And grader's notes, and I was imagining just the fumbling about or dealing when you're at a convention and talking to a dealer and you don't have access to the grader's notes, and they may, and then what's going to happen there? That changes their dynamic. Oh, if I need to look this up, could they potentially raise the price? Oh, if I need to look up the dealer's notes because you don't have access, that's something, blah, 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 this. And that's minor and that could be petty. I'm just saying that. I'm just spitballing, throwing out there just some of the wild scenarios that could happen. Who knows what people are going to do when it could potentially interfere with the money that can make in from a sale. So again, I just wanted to add another element in there because that line just stuck out to me so much, along with all the other things that they were talking about there. And as I said, I just didn't want to gloss over everything else, or just touch on everything else, because everybody else has done so more eloquently and more in depth. And again, you can just go to the website and see everything there if you're interested in CGC graded comics, or even if you're just curious, hey, you know what, you just like the industry. One of the big things about me being a comic fan is I just like all this. It's not even just the comics, it's some of the behind the scenes stuff. So that as being a major element of the comic book industry and comic book collecting, hey, just those kind of things that they're talking about there just kind of interest me. Just kind of almost like football with X's and O's, there's more to it, and that's always been an interest to a lot of people. So I just want to touch on that, add another layer there, just expand this discussion, because again, it's just so wild thing. And I don't want to get conspiracy theorist on you, but it's just something okay, what could potentially come out of this, and how does this affect collecting and just buying and selling? And just I always think about people who are just coming into the hobby and they just want to just join into that aspect of getting a graded comic, and then there's another element that they could potentially have to worry about and avoid getting scams. And think about scams, that's always the thing, because whenever you have anything there's money to be made, there's always going to be bad actors, always going to be people trying to scam and get over on other people, other unsuspecting folks. And one thing I just want to do is just help people avoid losing their hard-earned money on scams or just being misled and just the disinformation that can fly about. So that's just my opinion on this. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about some of these? Where do you stand on either maybe just some of the defects that they mentioned, that they talk about here? Do you care about that at all? Or you just avoided graded comics, or have you been into graded comics and you're okay, this is gonna turn me off once these changes go into effect, because now it's just gonna increase or just add another risk factor to just typical, just your normal buying and selling, because you used to be able to rely on that, okay, this book is this grade, it has these defects, okay, that's cool, that is acceptable to me, and I'm willing to pay this much for it. Now you got to worry about even understanding if a book even knowing if a book has a defect, or what kind, if it has a low grade. Is it missing a page? Is it missing coupon? What is happening on the inside? Or is somebody color on the page? Is just marker and color pencil? Whatever, somebody could take scissors to the inside of it and just slash it away. You'd have no idea on some of these. So just share your thoughts in the comments below. Definitely curious in sharing this and continue this discussion in the comments. So share that. Happy reading, happy content, happy collecting. There's Geno's Comics. Thanks for watching, and peace out.